All right, let's talk about sake. Today, we're going to tackle something I know a lot of us struggle with: how to move beyond just saying, this is good, and start describing it with real confidence. Let's dive in. We've all been there, right? You take a sip of a really fantastic sake, your brain is lighting up with all these flavors and sensations, but then someone asks, "So, what do you think?" And you just draw a blank. Well, you're not alone, and we're going to fix that today.
You know, the secret isn't about memorizing 100 different tasting notes. It's about being able to tell the story of the sake in your glass. And that whole story comes together in the final and most important step of tasting, the conclusion, or the wrap-up.
So our first stop is building that foundation. Before we can tell a great story, we need the right words, the right vocabulary, to actually describe what's going on in the glass. Now, to get to that final chapter, we first have to understand the parts that come before it. So let's do a super quick recap of the simple 5-step process that gets us all the information we need.
So, we're probably all pretty familiar with the first 4 steps, right? Appearance, aroma, flavor, and texture, and finish. But the real magic, the part where it all clicks, happens in step 5. That's where we use our brain to pull all those little observations together into one big picture conclusion.
Okay, so let's actually build that profile. In this section, we're going to see exactly how to take those raw notes from each step and weave them into a complete and, honestly, a pretty compelling description. So here's the key thing, the ultimate goal. You want to describe the sake's balance. How do all those individual parts, what you see, what you smell, what you taste, how it feels, how do they all work together? Are they in harmony? That's the story we're trying to tell.
You know, the best way to get a feel for this is to just see it in action. So let's walk through a real-world example, and we'll start with a classic daiginjo. That's a style of sake that's often known for being pretty light, aromatic, and fruity.
Okay, now take a look at this full description. It paints a really clear picture, doesn't it? It talks about the color, the fruity smell, that gentle sweetness, the crisp texture, and that short, refreshing finish. This right here, this is our target, a complete, evocative summary. Now here's what's so cool about this. When you break it all down, you can see exactly how that final description is really just a summary of the impressions from each of those 5 steps. Crystal clear is appearance. Banana and honeydew is aroma. And you just go down the list. It's all about connecting the dots.
Okay, so that was a light and fruity daiginjo. Now let's see how this same framework works for a completely different style, a junmai sake, which is usually a bit richer and more rice-forward.
Here we go. Notice the different words being used. We're not talking about bananas and melons anymore. Now we're hearing things like golden, calm, rice cake, rounded, and a long finish. The structure is exactly the same, but the words are telling a totally different story. And again, we can see exactly how that final story is built from all these individual pieces. The golden color hints at the richness. The ricey aroma is met with a mellow sweetness and a rounded texture. It all just works together. This method lets you accurately describe pretty much any sake you run into.
So, you might be thinking, this is great, but where do I get all these words? Well, that brings us to our next section, your personal vocabulary toolkit.
Think of this as your library of scents. Aromas in sake can often be grouped into categories like fruits, plants, rice, or even milky notes. Don't feel like you need to memorize all of this. Just know that these categories are a great place to start when you're searching for just the right word.
And it's the same exact idea for flavor and texture. This table gives you the words to describe what you're actually feeling in your mouth. Is the sweetness gentle or is it robust? Is the mouthfeel sharp or is it silky and smooth? Having this vocabulary ready just helps you pinpoint the exact sensation.
Okay, we've covered the framework and we've built up our vocabulary. Now let's put it all together and focus on the single most important idea to remember for the next time you have a glass of sake in your hand. Remember this, balance is everything. When you describe a sake, you're not just listing off things you notice, you're explaining how all the pieces fit together to create one single harmonious experience. That is the true essence of an expert description. Now, if the whole 5-step process still feels like a lot, don't worry. Here's a pro tip. Start simple. Just focus on 2 things, aroma and flavor. What do you smell and what do you taste? Honestly, nailing those 2 will get you 80% of the way there, and it's a fantastic way to build your confidence. So the next time you pour a glass, don't just drink it, listen to it. Every sake has a story to tell through its appearance, its aroma, and its flavor. And now, you have the tools to understand that story and even better, to share it with others. So what will you discover?